Hey,
Hello,
everybody.
world. Episode 8 of the
Welcome
Thursday
back.
Exchange. February 18th, people. We have a wonderful show in store for you tonight. We have the talented Steve Sapato, inspirational speaker, professional storyteller, trainer, and author, and many other things.
All around, the guy's a man of many talents. So he'll be coming on at 8 o'clock tonight. So if you want to tune back, stay tuned until then, or come back then. Either way, he'll be on then, and
You'll want to stay on throughout.
Yeah,
let's not advise. We want you to stay
pretend
here.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, don't say that. We want you to stay on this podcast throughout the show. But this has been an interesting week in the world. And as we typically do here on the show, we like to go over the current events.
Yes, sir.
Let's stay relevant with the times. I always do this. I don't know why the stories of the week always happen to surround around cats and felines, but Oregon family saved by their cat who was credited for finding a dangerous gas leak. The cat was alerting its humans that, hey, sniff, sniff, there's a gas leak. Listen, I wish I had this cat, a few years ago when I was staying at a place and I didn't have carbon monoxide detectors and the furnace was backing up in the house.
I'm narcoleptic. Let's face it. Even if I had a cat, I'd be screwed either way.
Yeah, you're definitely screwed. But maybe the cat would
be like,
scratch you or something while you were sleeping. I don't know why. We always get these cat stories, but I guess they're heartwarming.
Well, there's a reason why they're like the number one search. Well, I don't know if they're number one, but they're one of the top searched items online, like funny cats or cat stories, cat rescue, fireman rescues a cat.
Cat videos.
Like, I love cats, don't get me wrong, but
I think YouTube basically is popular from cat videos. That's where it all began.
Initially, yes. And then when people realized you could make money off of it, they were like, ooh.
So mysterious lights were over California this week.
No stealth bomber.
Tons of spectators were thinking that this was, extraterrestrials, UFOs floating overhead. Well, apparently it was the recent SpaceX launch that they were doing. So it kind of like
not used to it flying out of Texas, not flying out of Texas anymore.
Yeah, so people were getting worried about what this was.
Elon Musk is an alien, so it's all good.
But he's also a billionaire, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, you can be acquitted as a billionaire. All you need is money.
Let's not get into that story. So all you people out there, we've always been talking about the stimmy and how to make an extra few bucks in your pocket. There's a dream job for all you people out there. Applications are being accepted until March 30th. All you got to do is log on to sleepstandards.com. They're offering 2,000 buckaroos, okay? It's another sleep study job. They want a sleeper for 5 nights in different environments, one including a 5-star resort. So one of those 5 nights is in a 5-star resort. They're basically doing a sleep study.
Are they stealing your kidneys while you sleep?
That I cannot confirm or deny.
I'm almost tempted anyways.
$2,000. They're basically doing a study to see how people sleep in different environments. So those other 4 nights, I don't know. Maybe you're going to be earning your $2,000. They might have you sleeping like in freezing cold. I don't know, in the wilderness.
Oh. Dude, I would be an interesting control subject. They're like, can you sleep here? Yes. Can you sleep here? Yes. Can you sleep here? Yes.
I'm an eyewitness to this. You pretty much can sleep anywhere. I mean,
I've fallen asleep standing up and woken up when I hit the floor. Not fun.
Yeah, so
don't recommend it.
This is the job for you, Stefan, and anyone like Stefan, this is a perfect job for them. If you could sleep anywhere, any type of environment, hot, cold, rough, soft, dangerous. I don't know. Listen, I don't know. So go to the website, find out the nitty-gritty details.
Send me that link. I'm curious now.
Probably the fact of narcolepsy, you might automatically be disqualified because I think you need to be sleeping.
They're like, Well, like I said, it could be a controlled subject.
Can't discriminate now, can they?
Well, they can, but who gives a shit?
No. So a 911 call, another California story this week. The highway patrol heard about dismembered body parts floating down the river. And when they ended up going to the story or going to the area, they found out that it was just mannequin body parts floating. So there's a bunch of people over there taking photos of what they believe to be body parts and a murder scene, thinking they got there first. And, I'm not going to lie. I thought I found a body a long time ago when I was younger in the woods with friends. It was really creepy. Like there was like a tarp over something. And we were dumb. Before we called the cops, we were like, I don't want to say tampering with the body. Like it wasn't a body. It was an animal or something in the woods that someone put a tarp over for whatever reason.
That's weird.
It is. But, when you do urban exploring, you happen to run into really bizarre situations.
Not least of which is the amount of things that are randomly graffitied on the walls. If you start reading them, it becomes both simultaneously amusing and terrifying.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're seeing all the demonic 666s everywhere.
Not just that, you also see how stupid people are.
You know what? For a lot of people who are extremely not in touch with their sexuality or whatnot, when you go in these places, you just see nothing but penises everywhere. For whatever, I think the number one.
Even my niece was like, "What's that?"
One of the most graffitied thing probably in the world is a penis. It's everywhere. It's the first thing a man does when they want to scribble on their desk as in sixth grade is draw a dick.
Yep.
What's going on over there?
Sorry.
You having troubles?
My computer lost its balance. My apologies.
All right, cool. But yeah, enough about that. So another uplifting story of the week. A Chicago couple. There's a lot of feedback. I don't know what's going on. Are you typing or something?
No.
Well, there's a lot of feedback. A Chicago couple. They went to their favorite restaurant on their 20th anniversary, and they decided to leave a $2,000 tip for the waitress. And yeah, I want to be that waitress. $2,000.
Get a sex change to be that waitress.
What?
You said you wanted to be a waitress, so.
or waiter. I wanted to be that waiter. So yeah, it's there is happy things going on in the world, so the person left a little note behind with the 2,000 buckaroos saying, "Thank you for the 20 years of good memories, excellent food, and outstanding service. Cheers," and many more. So what if this guy was going to this restaurant on his 20 years and the experience wasn't all that jazz? I don't know how many times I go out for special occasions, date night, and the service is subpar.
That would be the story you tell your grandkids. Be like, "I came here one time and I got all this money."
I was going to give it, but I decided not to. There's actually a funny little sub-story. I don't want to say I'm petty, but I am. I'm a little petty. A few years ago, I went to a diner out here with a few friends, and for whatever reason, nobody was serving us. I don't know if it was something all these young guys aren't going to tip us, but no one was coming to our table. And oh no, what it was is the previous time I went there, I had asked the waitress, I said, "How's the pie?" She says, "It's fresh." And I'm like, okay, that's good. So she gave me lemon meringue pie, and it was super stale. The meringue tasted like old, stale marshmallows. And
it makes you wonder what she was used to eating.
Well, I told her, I said, "Is there anything else that's not stale?" She looked me in the eyes and she told me, "It's fresh." She's like, "I wouldn't lie to you." I said, "Well, ma'am, you're lying." So I don't know if that was just really shitty pie. It was shit. It was pure donkey dong. But when I ate it, I gave her a tip. I didn't say nothing. But the next time I went to that restaurant, they boycotted serving us. So out of pettiness, I made sure I pulled out everyone at the table pulled out 10 singles and like arranged them in like a fan type of shape. So when we left there, we were watching from the window, like how the guy was like, you know, he was a really excited waiter, but all the other waitresses were super like upset that they didn't come serve us. So I don't know. It kind of was relative. Listen, tip your servers, but servers out there, don't just be entitled to like a mega tip when you didn't do anything to deserve it. It's still a job at the end of the day. And I'm all about tipping service people.
I remember I used to work at Olive Garden while my sister was a server and I was a cook. And I remember I used to get so mad because I'd leave there working the same amount of hours she did, and she'd walk away with 3 times the amount of money. And I'd be like, do I get a tip?
Well, that's the same thing with busboys. I always feel like I hope that a lot of restaurants like give them a piece of the pie at the end of the day. I mean, they're cleaning the table, they're doing all this stuff. And
they just start paying people what they deserve rather than relying on a system that was developed initially to deprive people of their rights when they had the Jim Crow laws, because basically tipping came about when they no longer had slaves. And they said, well, we still would like a little extra service. Here's a couple extra bucks. And then it continued from there. And now we have waitresses earning their base pay is below minimum wage. And then it's dependent solely on what they make for the rest of the day on their tips. And what's even better for the restaurants and bad for the staff is they have to worry about their own taxes. The restaurant doesn't have to do it.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm not going to speak in regards to waitresses and waiters, but I will say I do know a few that they're making big bucks depending on where they work and the type of, you know, how much they hustle. They're making big bucks. They're making more than people with their master's and bachelor's degrees, and they're serving tables. They're making good money.
And you know me, I'm not usually one to hop on the bandwagon and be like, oh, that's discrimination. But I will say, like, as a guy who used to apply for a lot of waitering jobs when I was massively overweight, there is a big discrimination against your size, because you look at the qualifications of the people who got hired and you look at the qualifications that I had, and I was like, culinary graduate, worked in restaurant field, and then you have 16-year-old mumbo jumbo. But
you know what, though? I'm not going to lie, and it's going to sound crazy. If I see a big guy serving me, I assume the food is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Wait, what?
I'm like, well, I assume the food is good if the guy is big. I mean, I know logically he didn't get big just eating their food.
Where that whole phrase came from, never trust a skinny chef. Except almost every chef in my class was skinny, and I'm like...
Well, they were in class. They were in class. Are they skinny now? That's the real question.
I don't know. I haven't talked to them.
So that's another uplifting story of the week, because I think we need some uplifting stories before we get into the hard-hitting major topics. Former high school classmates make a shocking discovery. They're long-lost twins. So this woman named Karen and Mike were great friends throughout high school. Okay. After high school, they had many years apart. So Karen found Mike on Facebook. You know, just as we all do. I found elementary friends on Facebook, whatever. Old records came back with Karen. She realized that she had a biological twin. And when she did some research, she found out it was her old classmate, Mike. These two now are inseparable. They're like two peas in a pod, she says. And they talk to each other every day. Isn't that crazy? Like, I'm happy that these two didn't get romantically involved, not knowing, because they were really close friends in high school.
Yeah, I'm going to try putting on a pair of headphones. I apologize about all the feedback. Let me see if that makes a difference. One moment.
Okay.
It's driving me nuts. There you go. Sorry. Any better?
Yeah.
All right.
I hope, yeah, because the feedback was confusing me. Sometimes I'd be mid-sentence and I'm hearing myself back. I'm like, am I hearing voices? Like,
yeah, it's still there, but it's a little better now.
It's nowhere even close. There was like literally, it sounded like you were tapping on your keyboard. Sorry, world, for, you know, if we're making you lose your mind as much as us, we'll try to keep this more of a smooth dialogue.
Guilty.
God damn it, Stefan.
Hey, I got to buy some more equipment.
Yeah. So there is uplifting stories in the world, and like I said, I'm excited that these two people didn't get romantically involved or became, enemies, because there's a lot of bullcrap that goes on in high school. A lot of people in high school that necessarily didn't get along, but they just happen to be cool friends, and later on find out, hey, you're my sister, you're my brother,
Hope they didn't
and we're
date.
twins.
Hope they didn't date.
No, as I said, it's a great thing that they didn't.
Oh man. I another interesting story that I found that has nothing to do with that, but I just thought it was really cool is Egypt discovered the remains of the world's oldest, they believe it's the oldest mass production brewery, and it was discovered, they believe it's from the early dynastic period, so literally one of the oldest breweries that made beer for like our current kind of Budweiser kind of situation. You have one company that produces for millions of people, or back then thousands. But hey, if you like beer, that's pretty cool.
Hey, yeah. I'm not a beer drinker, but I know a lot who do, and probably
I'm not anymore, but I enjoy the taste of it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. Speaking of old things, over in who's heard of Stonehenge? Everybody's heard of Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Now the stones that were used to make some of the big pillars and the monoliths, they're a type of stone called bluestone. We have a lot of it in this area as well in New York, and they think that the stones themselves originated from another stone circle over in. I'm probably butchering the name of that, and I'm guaranteed I'm going to say this wrong because Welsh words are not the way they are spelled. I don't know why. I think it's like Gaelic, but it's like Wanmawn, like Waunmawn. So I'm not sure how they pronounce that because their L's sound like a like if you look at their alphabet, it's very strange. But it's kind of cool that they think that the stones actually came from that far away to be used in a new stone circle. And
you mean to tell me that wasn't created by aliens?
Hey, maybe they moved it.
You hear a lot of, whenever I see like documentaries about aliens and like the old cave drawings,
and maybe it was extraterrestrials from outer
Stonehenge and the pyramids are always brought together.
And I kind of follow astrology. That's why.
Yeah, and it is really sad because it kind of takes from like what other cultures and other like what the human race has done and accomplished.
Yeah. Like we can't be that smart.
We couldn't have been that strong and that, ingenuitive. We couldn't have done that. And that's the thing. Like people don't realize we've done really amazing things. We've created like cruise ships where thousands of people have.
We've created digipets that were the coolest thing when we were growing up. We've
created the internet where we can communicate with thousands of people at any given moment.
And tear down a nation.
Whatever. Voter fraud, whatever you may call it. The internet.
I have no idea, man. I don't even want to get in that topic. That's a ball of worms.
I'm just saying.
But along those lines, like, current news, he was acquitted this week for what happened at the Capitol. And, like it or hate it, I think it may have prevented more violence by doing it that way, because if they had acquitted, I think a lot of people probably would have gotten violent again. I hate to say it.
I mean, all of Democrats and 7 Republicans voted to convict Trump. Okay. Yeah. They fell short of the 2/3 majority that they needed to convict him.
Yeah.
So that's not to say like, oh, he got off scot-free. I mean, there was a lot of people that were totally for him getting convicted. However, with this done now, is Trump currently off the hook? Is he clear now? Is that what we think?
No, but his kids are.
No, well, see, I don't think that he's off right now because there's so many lawsuits right now that are currently pending.
Including the one where he's living because he's not supposed to be living there under the contracts that they had.
Yeah, the NAACP, they're going after him under the anti-Ku Klux Klan Act for intimidation and incitement of the Capitol riot. So even though he might not have gotten impeached really or, convicted, he got acquitted, there's still tons of lawsuits out there. So, but I had a show the other day where someone was asking me my thoughts on this, and the truth of the matter is it's not over. You haven't seen the end of this year. Or
Mr. Big Hands.
You haven't seen it, and no right away. I'm when I say I'm personally bipartisan, I truly am. I think the hypocrisy on both sides is one and the same.
Yep.
And I'll get bashed for saying that, and I'll have people like call me every name in the book for saying that. But the truth of the matter is, to have fair policy and like shunning one's views, you're not seeing both sides of the coin. Therefore, you can't have an honest debate. We're talking about Trump and all the shit he's done and what's going on there. But then on the flip side of that, let's talk about Biden this week, okay?
Or Obama or Bush or any of the other presidents who've been there before.
Let's not talk about them. This isn't their time. This is Biden's time.
Okay.
So as we've been talking in the past about keeping the people that we vote into office, accountable, one of the major promises that he's been speaking about is,
$1.9 trillions.
Well, beyond that, it's the student loans, forgiveness. Okay. Biden completely rejects Schumer and Warren's proposal to cancel the $50K student loans per borrower. He is quoted saying, "I will not make it happen. I will not make it happen, period."
Wasn't that one of the things that he ran on?
Of course. Of course. And this is only a couple weeks later. He doesn't want to forgive debts to borrowers from elite schools. That's one of his main things. They'll be able to pay off their debts. So, that's understandable if they're making a certain amount of money. However,
but not every elite school leads to making a lot of money. Like, I went to an elite school, the Culinary Institute of America. I ain't rich. I don't know too many who are.
There's a lot of elite schools and stuff like that I was accepted in. And, I was sitting there in Hofstra. They do the presidential debates there and stuff like that, private. I could not, in my right mind, take out those student loans. They're looking, each semester is as much as like going to a 4-year school all in one. And it's like, I couldn't afford to do that. There's no way I could afford to do that. So it wasn't even a choice in my mind. But other people, they want to take that risk, that gamble for the future. They believe that, hey, I will get out of this university and I'll be guaranteed a great job. And the reality is sometimes you're making, after you get your bachelor's degree, you're making,
$12 an hour.
$12 an hour. I mean, maybe if you're lucky, you're making 40, but you're on call, or not $40 an hour, 40 grand a year, but you are owed $200,000 plus in student loans. So I think this is a really big misstep. I think we need to truly endorse education. That's my political view. I think as Americans, I think we need to say, like, listen, education's important, and it shouldn't be something.
If you can subsidize corn, you should be able to subsidize the future of your entire country.
Well, that's the thing, too. Another thing that he's quoted saying is he wants the money to be better spent on early childhood education. That is important, but as adults...
They're all at home now.
Well, that's now. I want, and I think a lot of people want, their futures, to not be in crippling debt. Now, there's a flip side of the coin. What about all the people who paid their debts off? What about the people who, they did their time paying off their student loans? There was a time when student loans were semi-affordable. They were always expensive. There was a time where
a one-income family house could buy, or a one-income family household could buy a new house and afford to pay it off with the income from one job.
Impossible now, relatively. I mean, at least in New York State. I mean, trust me.
You could buy a tent. You'd have to pay for the plot of land.
We were talking to Dickie Baxter last week, he was a wonderful guest on the show. And in the discussion, we were talking about the housing market. One of the really interesting things I wish I would have brought up is, like, what about New York State? Or different parts of New York. You buy a house in PA, the same size house on twice the size of land, whatever. You're paying quadruple, like right over the border in New York, for something that looks like it needs a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It's like, why is that? What is it with New York that we have to deal with stuff like this? But it's just like this, education in a way, too much money is getting in the wrong hands. And
it's all being like in New York in particular, like this is something I don't get, is why is New York City not the capital of our state? Like, Albany's the capital. Have you been to Albany? Yeah, they've got some interesting things going, but since it's no longer an industrial town, it's weird that the center of government is there, and you have a bunch of these fat cats who are removed from the entire situation of the rest of the country, making decisions for it. Well, it's like everybody else in government right now, but it's just,
out of sight, out of mind.
exactly.
That's what it really is. Going back to the subject, really, the thing that the Biden administration is really pushing now is the proposal for 10K loan forgiveness. Now, 10K loan forgiveness, we'll take it. We'll take what we can get. But 10K loan forgiveness is practically half of your community college degree. Community college degrees, your associate's degrees, roughly run around $24,000 altogether, because you're practically, it's about $4,500 a semester. If you add in books and everything, so you're talking about at least $4,500 or $25,000 altogether. So it's paying half of your student loan for a community college.
Yeah, people don't realize how much those books cost until they get there, and they're like, "Holy crap!"
And that's the devaluing of things as well. It's kind of like when you take a brand new car off the lot, and like as soon as you put the key in the ignition, the car's worth like half of what it's worth. Well, when you buy a book in the bookstore at any college, you go to return it at the end of your semester. And I don't know about you, anything I have is pristine. I take value in it. So when I returned those books, it wasn't like there was like mustard stains and crumpled up pages. They were almost new.
And this, I've had a few mustard stains.
The $200 textbook that I, bought and I returned, I get like $20 back for, and they're reselling it for $180 or whatever it is. So the revalue is ridiculous, but it's another whole college years story.
It's
but
pretty nuts.
Adding about wasteful spending, and I really want to get your opinion on this one, but another big story this week is NASA's astrobiology rover Perseverance makes its historic landing on Mars. Okay. This sailed through space for the last 7 months, covering 293 million miles, costing
that's like an inconceivable distance. Like, that's insane.
Costing Americans $2.7 billion. And what is this rover doing? It's searching for traces of ancient microbial life on the red planet. Now, I'm all about research here. I'm not. I don't want to say I'm not. But $2.7 billion to see if there once was life on Mars when there's people not able to pay their bills. And it's not just because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
There's always
this was going on before the pandemic.
There's always been a homeless pandemic or a homeless issue in this country, a drug crisis in this country, programs that we kind of cut funding to, but we're still putting money towards things that really, what are we getting prepared, like Interstellar, for like a new planet to,
we are
live on?
That's basically like Elon Musk's whole thing, is like to move to Mars.
Well, go ahead, billionaires. You spend your money to do such a thing.
A little red sand bath in the desert.
I'm kind of against it a little bit. I think that there's more important issues here in our country. If we want to be isolationist and use that money just for our people, but even if we didn't, that's a lot of money.
Not only that, like, you think about it, like, if you can't fix your crap on your own world, what things you're going to be able to do better on a new one?
Well, that's exactly it. I don't know if it's because they want resources from Mars.
It is.
Possibly.
I mean, there's probably
find gold mines or whatever on there. I don't know. We can speculate all day. Maybe there's oil refineries on Mars.
The aliens.
Whatever it is, have a galactic war, like Star Wars.
It's like you watch Star Trek and all these other shows, and you're like, oh, they act like the idiots here on this planet, doing the same thing, except they're in outer space, and they're doing it again.
It's just to me, it's like wasteful spending. It's wasteful spending.
I'm torn on it because, like, Part of
All right,
me, I'm a
feed the
science
children.
nerd.
We just talked about all the charities in our last episode. Our whole last episode was based on charities, okay?
Okay.
$2.7 billion. That's a lot of money towards Make-A-Wish Foundation or maybe curing cancer, you know? But
Which
we're
the
going
CEO would get.
not to Make-A-Wish. See, those were the
Oh,
bad
we were talking
those were
about
the bad charities. We're talking about the
yes.
good. I'm saying, like, you know how like everything's relative in the news, and like that's why we talk about the news stories to see if
Mhm.
our topics kind of get hit on. And to me, it's like I would rather see money go to good causes like, you know, Make-A-Wish Foundation or
Mhm.
the Cancer Society and you know, whatever to help people that need it.
Well, let's start with our taxes just going towards what they were supposed to go towards: roads, highways, safety, education.
Social security.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
I mean, I eventually would like to set up a Roth IRA because I really don't think there's going to be a Social Security when I get older. I mean, at this point, it's already like.
Listen, that's a topic in itself.
Yeah.
So
But,
we're gonna go. Oh, you got another topic before I jump
yeah.
on to?
So, couple things like, and this is related to our topic today, which is like, living in a digital world. BBC News and World Report were both censored, and basically they were in Hong Kong, so they're actually not able to report there anymore because they don't want people to see what's actually going on with the protests and things like that. So it's kind of an interesting segue into the world that we live in right now. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're doing this in two separate locations, and our audience is God knows where in the world. I mean, we have people from other countries watching, maybe not live, but after the fact. I have family in Australia and Switzerland. I mean, so like we're doing this all digitally, and everything has changed very much in the last year, and in some ways almost seamlessly. So it's kind of like you knew this was already on their way.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing in a way. There is a disconnect. You know, I'd much rather have a conversation sitting across the table and sharing giving a handshake and sharing a pizza pie and whatever, just
That's
enjoying each other's, sharing each other's company. But we do have to adapt to the times, and we will get to this topic. Before we get there, I want to go on to Black History Month. We are getting close to the end of the month, and I want to make sure that we really are celebrating Black History Month. And we're not going to go too deep into this this week. However, I really want to focus on Harriet Tubman, American abolitionist, political activist. She was born into slavery. She escaped, made over 13 missions.
She is one of the
saving
toughest women in history.
Other enslaved people. There's a lot of facts that people don't know about her.
Didn't she lead like a regiment or a group of soldiers?
She actually did. She is the first woman to lead a combat assault.
Wow.
She also was a Union scout for the Civil War. A lot of people don't know that. She had a code name of Moses. She was illiterate her whole life, but that in no means meant she was stupid.
No, not at all.
This is going to be one for you that you're going to actually find quite interesting. She suffered from narcolepsy.
What?
Yeah. She, in an instance in her early childhood, someone threw a weight at a slave and it had hit her in the head. And from that moment, she had a sleeping disorder throughout her whole life.
Was it narcolepsy or epilepsy?
Narcolepsy. Wow. She would have sleeping spells that she would go through. Later in her life, she actually had a brain surgery to help fix her sleeping issues, which did not work.
I was going to say, what was it?
She refused anesthesia because she didn't want to be knocked out during it. She is one bad woman. Like she's tough.
I mean, like, it's funny. Like, I'm glad you brought her up. I did a documentary with a group of other filmmakers last year on Harriet Tubman, and well, basically there was a statue that was made by an artist in Carolina. I think it was South Carolina, but forgive me if I'm wrong on that. but basically he made a statue of Harriet Tubman leading a child away from the people who were pursuing them along the Underground Railroad. And like just the expression on the face, like it's this beautiful piece of art. And so we volunteered to make a documentary with the Newburgh Free Library, and the statue was actually bought to Newburgh, right down into like the heart of Newburgh, right by the Washington Monument is where the library is. It's also the part of town where it's starting to make a little bit of a comeback, but it's still historically there's been a lot of issues there because of a lot of the policies that were put in place in terms of like, you know, social programs and urban renewal and all of that stuff. And so, you know, we got video of it coming down on a flatbed truck coming down on Broadway and getting brought to the pedestal where it remained for a period of time, and then was actually shipped on to another place after that. It's actually going on a tour across the country. No. And you know, it was the first time I really I learned about Harriet Tubman in school, and I've seen a couple of documentaries and stuff, but it was the first time I really started looking into like who she was and what she meant and what she did. And you know, just it was beautiful seeing the entire community of Newburgh come out, because like I don't know if for people who are not from our area, Newburgh, New York is like, people in New York City, they go, oh, Newburgh. You know, it's, for a while there was a lot of crime, and you know there still is to some degree, but it's also a beautiful city in some parts. I mean, there are areas that are run down like any city that has problems, but even in those areas, you know, small groups like this are making public art, or they're bringing in like monuments like this to come in and commemorate things. And especially during like the time of tension that we're going through right now, like with all the racial conflict and everything, you know, it was really nice to see an interracial crowd, like black, white, Chinese, doesn't matter what race you were, like they were all there to support this. And it was really cool. And then we interviewed several of the people, including the artist, and put it into a documentary. So it's called Harriet Tubman. Wow. This is what happens when you have a brain disorder. Let me look up the title.
I totally think it's amazing. I couldn't picture a better person to talk about this week than Harriet Tubman. There's a lot of things going on in the world. You know, 2016, the Treasury Department announced that Tubman would be replacing Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill. And there's been this big heaping debate of, you know, taking our history, taking Jackson off the bill.
She's part of our history.
She's a part of the history. And beyond that, don't you think that in today's age, you know, having people of different backgrounds who have made a giant impact on our history should also get, you know, honored like that? I mean, you know, our bill should represent the people and the difference in all the people. You know, maybe for the wildest time, you have certain people that are on the bills that you're like totally shocked that they're there. Like, why is this person here on this bill?
Yeah, some of them are like, well, he probably should not be there.
I mean, when you look up the history of Andrew Jackson, and you know, you see things like the Trail of Tears and owning slaves and
that whole thing. I mean,
you know, there's just it's kind of wild that he's on the $20 bill.
He shouldn't be.
No,
at that point,
you know, but there's people have their beliefs and stuff like that, but at the same time, you know, our money should represent our people in general and what's going on in the world. So, moving on from that topic, virtual world. We are living in a virtual world unlike no other. I think, as you were saying before, that COVID-19 catapulted our virtual world into the utmost extremes. And seemingly overnight, we embraced this virtual world as if it was something we've been doing for years.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the case. There are some things that I feel did not exist prior to COVID-19. You're talking about a year ago, March, you know, that now are so popular. You know, for example, how many people out there are now entirely doing their doctor's appointments online, teledoc?
I had one the other day.
I had too. And I'm terrified of going to the doctor. I have like not just me, but when I see doctors and stuff like that, it's like a representation of, it sounds stupid, but bad things happen, bad diagnoses, people getting bad news. Oh, you're overweight. Oh, you got diabetes. Oh, you got cancer, these terrible news. So I've always, like, it's scary to me. Yeah. But at the same time, like, it's important and it's necessary.
And that's understandable. I mean, I worked in medical for quite a long time. I'm probably going to be going back to at least part-time in the future. And it's, you have people who, from all types, like you have people like yourself or people like my sister who you'd have to hit her in the leg with a pipe to get her to go to the hospital just about.
That's me.
It's like a friend of mine who refused to go, and the consequences of him not going when everybody told him to go, it got to the point where I ended up showing up to the house. I'm like, you're coming with me now, and we're going to the doctor. I'm not going to share what it was or anything like that, but I was like, you're getting in the car. We're going. This is done. You're going to the doctors now. And thank God he did, because, it could have gotten worse. But it's an interesting thing. You go into a doctor's office, and for some people it's comfort. We had some people even during this pandemic when they were telling people, like, don't come in the beginning, like, just stay home. We had some people who, they've been alone for many, many years, old people who have health issues, and they would just come back daily sometimes. And you're like, why are you here? And like, they would have some sort of reason just so that they could have contact. It was, it was sad, but it was, watching all of that go by and then seeing how seamlessly, telehealth rolled out within a week or two of, I mean, it wasn't seamless. There were some issues. Don't get me wrong. It's gotten a lot better, but that's a huge technological advance that people didn't even realize was in the works until this hit.
Yeah, I am pro, teledoc and anything like that.
Especially for therapy appointments or things like that. You don't want to drive somewhere for that.
Yeah, and I think that should be the thing that takes over as far as certain appointments. For example, like if you need a psychiatrist, a lot of times you're on a list for a couple years, not a couple months.
Like $80 for a visit where they go,
a couple
how you feeling?
Years. I think, it depends on the person. Some people, for example, if they need someone to talk to, a professional to talk to, why not, have a conversation like that? I think a lot of people are afraid because they feel like, their system can get hacked into, and, people could watch them and steal their information a lot easier. A lot of these teledoc things are super encrypted, secure, but I don't think anything out there is flawless. I think anything could be cracked.
With a smartphone in your pocket, which is a walking tracking device that monitors your movements, your steps. If you don't turn the app off, it literally tracks your movements throughout the entire day. So if you think that having a teledoc appointment is going to sacrifice your privacy, wake up.
Well, that's what you just said is a perfect prime example. A lot of people don't know that with Instagram, they have no idea that they're being tracked wherever they are unless they turn off their location.
Facebook,
so a lot of people,
every site.
A lot of people will take, videos and they'll post them right wherever they are. Do you know how many cheaters and how many like swindlers, drug dealers got caught up because they're posting videos like bundling up, bags of weed, and this guy's,
like,
taking, this guy's saying, I'm at work right now, and he's taking a selfie or he's posting it. And then his location's, at 3:00 in the mornings at some woman's house, and he gets caught up because the location's on. It's like technology is getting real smart. But that goes back, like I said, the teledoc, it's something that we've evolved into accepting. And like I said, I think it's a good move, good technology, making things easier. I mean, but there's something
wakes up conspiracy theory issues as well.
Yeah, but you know what though? There's some negatives to it too. I'll tell you what the negatives are. You have a serious issue and you go to teledoc, you're not getting serious help.
Yeah. There's a reason why doctors vehemently opposed the very thought of having a virtual appointment before the pandemic. They want to see you in person.
Think about it this way. You're a person who has self-conscious issues, okay? You could go weigh yourself and the doctor or the nurse, they're going to be the truth. They're going to tell you to stand on the scale. They're going to tell you to, they're going to take your height. They're going to take your blood pressure. When you do a teledoc visit, that's on you. Yeah. So a lot of people, they got a backache. They're a person that, I lift heavy boxes at work. My back hurts. That's the reason why. So when the doctor asks, your blood pressure, your height, your weight, you might lie. You might tell them, yeah, I'm 30 pounds lighter than I actually am because I don't want you to point out that I'm heavier. And I'm giving you not all the facts, and I'm not in your office for you to tell otherwise and for you to examine me. And I'm kind of your best resource. And sometimes we're not our own best resources.
Mm-hmm.
Mom isn't there to slap our hands and say, don't do that. Don't put your hand in the cookie jar kind of thing.
Sometimes that little voice in your head that's supposed to be there to help you, like, do this, don't do that. Sometimes it gets, I don't know, drunk or schizophrenic because it tells you to do stuff. You're like, this isn't logical.
And another thing that's going to become really...
And no, I don't hear voices, just to be clear.
You sure? You sure, Stefan? I think another big thing that has come out over this, and it's happened for the last, I would say, 10 years. Virtual learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken over. Listen, it all depends on the learner. It depends on the listen, I'm a hands-on type learner. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a participation type learner.
Me too.
Having a conversation like this helps me learn.
Yeah.
But if you're the type of person to script this entire conversation and say, here, read it. Read this book from front to back and tell me what you read. That's tough. I'm going to say it's tough for me, but it's more, I will remember more from, activities, from seminars, which we have a great speaker coming on later tonight.
Mm-hmm.
That will help me learn personally.
Exactly.
But I'll just tell you, sorry, when I went to college, there was a few college courses I took entirely online. And when I tell you it was hard to focus, man, it was hard to focus. So if you're someone who has any sort of attention deficit, and I'm not saying you have to have a disorder, I think we all have it. I think we all have it to a degree, or we're easily distracted. Music comes on, the phone rings, whatever. Man, it was tough to concentrate, especially on certain subjects, whether it was math or history. Doing that stuff entirely online, it's tough. So I can only imagine what all these students now, these, kids in high school, middle school, and how their parents are helping them with virtual learning when they haven't been in school for years. It's got to be a challenge. I know there's hiccups there.
Yeah. It's, there's definitely, there's two sides to it. Like for example, I was homeschooled for a couple of years when I was growing up, during the time when it was like, oh, you're homeschooled. Oh, you're one of those. Do you join the CSA and play with swords? Like that kind of stereotype was basically what went around. It was like, oh, you must be smart and very strange. There's some truth to that sometimes.
I think, you know what? And I was never homeschooled, and my friends who were homeschooled, I will say there was a social disadvantage for them. And
for me,
I don't want to say it was a fact
to begin with, because it, like in my instance, I got homeschooled because I was at a point where I was getting bullied so bad that my parents thought I was probably about to hurt someone if they pushed one more button on me. 7 years of that in a row, I just basically was ready to pop. And so at first I thought I was in trouble, but it ended up saving my life. So in that sense, like, I'm one of the unusual ones, but there were a lot of people in our homeschooling groups in the area that I would, try to go to try to make friends. I'm like, I got nothing. I got nothing in common.
Yeah. It's always tough. My life has been a balancing act as well, but I never had the homeschool experience. But from my knowledge and this is what I worry about with the kids now in school, is they're not having that social experience. So, a lot of and right now there is no other social experiences really going on as far as, you said, like groups outside, like there is, but it's different when you're going to school Monday through Friday. And that's why, like, it's important. I feel like the world needs to open up. It's a good asset to have virtual learning and get better at it, but there has to be a way to connect people human to human, because kids aren't going out and having recess. They're not, going to art club. And like, for example, you might not be a athlete, but for
it's
me,
killing my nephew. He's like,
I
not
might
only-
be in the
he's-
drama club though, or
Yeah.
the after school arts,
chess club, which I
club,
started.
whatever it is, to be really a part of it and feel inspired. So there's pros and cons.
My niece and nephew right now, it's like the one in New Jersey, she's doing much better with it because she's more introverted and she likes, it's hard for her as well. But my nephew, for example, like he's, God bless him, like they didn't like stick him on pills like so many people do now, but like he definitely has a lot of hyperactive tendencies, whether it's ADHD or not. I have no idea. All I know is that there was literally a time when I was babysitting and I'm like, okay, Cody, go put your shoes on. He's like, oh, cool. What are we going to do? I'm like, go run around the house 3 times and then come back inside. He's like, okay. Ran around the house, come back. Why do I do that? I'm like, never mind. It didn't work. like that's the energy level of this child. Like when he was an infant, you'd carry him like holding it. He had to be facing forward, looking at everything. Like just, he's a little boy with a lot of energy and he's an amazing athlete. And this has been a bit of a challenge for him because and for his sister as well, because she's also very athletic. It's like they went from being very social in the athletic field, multiple teams, multiple sports, plus going to school, to going to homeschooling where suddenly it's reliant on your own ability to focus. And it's a challenge for a lot of kids.
And you know what it is, though? I think for the most part, too, like it's going to contradict a little bit of what you just said. But at the same time, if you think about it, the younger generations, what are they? They're not the millennials. They're the Generation X.
Generation test tube.
But they're more equipped, I think, to this virtual world than we are. They grew up with, their tablets as opposed to their toys. They grew up, learning on computers when we were like sitting there opening books. So they're a little more equipped to the virtual learning and like a lot of the online applications that we know nothing about. And some of us might, like we talked about, like I just read a
TikTok.
study. Yeah, TikTok and all these other things are really popular. But I've just read this thing earlier this week that online dating has become the new norm as opposed to meeting. They said, a majority of people, they said pre-2010 would meet, at social gatherings, school functions, stuff like that, whether it was a bar, club, human interactions. They're saying most people now are meeting entirely online and they're going through a kind of a sorting process now, as opposed to before. I guess like meeting that one guy you meet at the bar who kind of looks cute, gives you a wink and sends you over a nice tall glass of water.
Sounds like you had some interesting nights.
No, but I'm saying like it's interesting how the virtual world is taking over. Is it a good or bad thing? I think we need a balance because, with something like COVID-19, there's a good chance that we will experience something like this again in our lifetime. And I think, is it going to go away? All of a sudden, people are going to stop using these devices? I don't think so. So,
it's interesting. Like, when we were talking, this is going back a little bit, but it reminded me of like the whole student loan debt thing. And I was listening to a documentary today about how Britain's like banking system and our banking systems are very similar in a lot of ways. Ours and their economy, like we can't make money as an economy with the way we are currently set up without debt. Like we've gotten to the business of trading debt in order to create revenue. And it's really absurd when you think about it. It's like you're trading on stuff that you don't own, that you hope that the people who are depositing the money aren't going to need back anytime soon or make a run on the bank. Like it's a very weird system that we have financially in this world. Like it's no longer backed by any kind of hard currency. It's literally all ones and zeros in the internet. So it's interesting how all of that kind of ties into that. I don't know why I went on that tangent, but it just reminded me of it.
I'm not sure, but I definitely agree with you. But as far as the virtual world we live in, and it's kind of created a disconnect on the way we act with each other and interact with each other. And there's misinterpretation of things we say and do.
Face tuning should be shot.
Well, for example, you send a GIF or you send an LOL at the wrong time and someone misinterprets what you're trying to say.
And then you have somebody who uses an LOL almost as a comma at these points, like, or
LOL.
Or if you like put something in caps lock by accident, people think you're yelling at them. It's like, no.
Well, there's been times where you and I were having a conversation and I could tell by the way you wrote something. If you didn't write out okay, like OK, AK or AY, okay. Mm-hmm. If you don't write that out and you just write K, just a K.
Oh, I'm guilty of that.
I assume you're upset with me.
No,
like, what's going on?
That's me.
What did I do, Stefan, to offend you? You know, but that's the thing. Like, there's that disconnect. But like I said, the newer generations, they're more in tune with the technology and being
to some
virtual.
Degree, but it's, you know, even on that basis of me and you, like, we talk a lot, quite frequently, and you know, we still have that miscommunication just because of different perceptions. So imagine a kid coming into it, all the layers of other misperceptions that we don't even think about now because so much of their life is digital, like completely absorbed by it.
And talk about a virtual world a little bit. I'm, myself included, my business partner Anthony, we transformed our brick and mortar in-person film festival to a virtual event. We did it for a number of reasons. One in particular being that the movie theaters are entirely closed. So what other choice did we have? So what if we showcased films, had Q&As virtual through, you know, sites like this, StreamYard or Zoom, had workshops via StreamYard or Zoom or Facebook Live, and we turned our event entirely online. I mean, there's a lot of other events on there. I'm seeing music festivals online, comedy shows online, circumstances like that they're keeping people safe from going out in public. Yet there, like I said, there's something still missing from doing these events. I think it will never be the same as being in an in-person event. A few people have asked me, like, what is it, you know, do you prefer doing virtual over like an in-person event? Virtual is more bulletproof, but sometimes with like show business or the audience, the live audience, and it's like a magic in itself. It has everything okay?
Yeah, I had to plug my phone back in because of the headphones.
Okay. So yeah, so that was our little topic on our virtual world, and I think we're about ready to add our guest, Steve Sapato. He's again inspirational speaker, storyteller, trainer, author, pretty interesting guy, and I think he's very relevant to the conversation that we have this week. You ready, Stefan?
Yep.
Something you're doing is, I don't know, feedback is wild.
Sorry, I'm dealing with a little bit of a technology issue here.
All right. Well, hello.
Hey, howdy.
How are you?
Stefan's got a frog in there somewhere. It's like creak, 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 creak.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. The feedback is making my brain warp. How are you doing tonight?
I'm excellent. If I was any better, it'd take two of me to handle it all.
Awesome. So, like, you have a very interesting story, and I've watched a few of your videos online that really kind of resonated with me, especially with tonight's conversation. I watched a video that talked about the communication and living in your email and text. And the miscommunication, I feel like, is true. We were just talking about it. How, you there? How we really do kind of take the humanity out of things when we live entirely through technology. And I just found it really interesting because you kind of like were speaking what was on my mind. I'm like, this, he kind of gets it.
Well, good. Thanks. Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? I remember how many years ago that my son said, you know, he would text me and I'd say, well, why don't you just call me? And he'd go, well, that's not what I do, Dad. I go, what do you mean? It's not what you do. You know, how does that work out that we don't talk, but we'd rather text. And so everybody has
it's
their
made dating
preferred
very
way.
difficult.
That's but it has. But that's just it. You know, we're taught now. Matter of fact, I teach people when we talk about marketing and sales, how do you like to communicate? Because some people like email, some people like text, some people like phone, some people like video.
Some people like their hands
and so
dirty.
Yeah, that's right. So you have to find out. But I heard you guys talking before I came on is that, one of the challenges with what we do, I mean, I think back to how many people, I grew up in the Woodstock era. You know, I was 19 years old when Woodstock happened. And, there were like 5 million people went to Woodstock, but 25 million people say they went. There's and there's something about a live event that everybody wants to say I attended. That's one of the real keys, is that people love being at a live event. The atmosphere, the electricity, the emotion conveyed in a live event. That doesn't convey over necessarily, the small screen, like the video screen certainly doesn't that well in phone, and not at all in email. And when
you
you
don't
say,
have to worry about technical issues with microphones and things like that.
That's right. That's right. But when you say, it's I mean, I talk about it. One of the biggest challenges at companies these days is still email, or text even. But I write to somebody, and I was just talking to someone. A guy wrote to me today, and he's a multimillionaire, and he said, Steve, I decided, and he's been around with me for 20 years, but he decided about a couple of years ago, he said, I think I want to be a speaker. I went, great, let's chat. Right. And then, after dinking back and forth, he goes, I don't know, because if you're worth $15-20 million, why do you want to be a speaker? Right. And so he just popped in the other day and said, hey, I think I want to be a speaker. I really decided. I went, great. Why don't you call me? And, I gave him my information, and he goes, well, is it lucrative? I went, we have to talk. We have to talk about how much money you can possibly make. If you're a millionaire and you're going to put into your advertising, millions into your advertising, you can probably be somebody like a Tony Robbins within a couple of years, right? And because you advertise, you become that person, and people will see you as that person. But his communication back was like, if it's lucrative. I went, well, it depends on. So why don't you call me? I might. You might what? It's possible. What's I mean,
so is life. What are we getting at here?
He sent me about 5 things where I finally looked at my wife and I went, I'm done. I'm out. If you can't send me a sentence, right, which like you guys were talking about, instead of okay, it's K.
And I'm guilty.
Well, my wife and I talk about it all the time on the TV shows. My daughter's name is Erin. Erin. That's it. Now she's in her 40s, right? So she's Erin. And since she was born, my ex-wife called her Air. I went, you can't finish can't go Aaron, right? And then of course you see everybody else shorten their names, and it's like, oh, his name is Zachary. So you call him Zach. Well, we get that. But when your name is, other stuff, and they shorten it down, I mean, they make it. We were just talking about one the other day, but it's like Bob. Okay, let's call him Boo.
Yeah, I don't understand some of the names are shortened. Like Richard is Dick, Bob is Robert.
Let me tell you something. Let me stop you right there. My middle name is Richard, and I refuse that.
I'm glad you're not Dick. That's a good thing.
Do not call me Dick, please.
When we were kids, Charles, one of the things that we had phone books back then, real phone books.
We had those too.
And one of the things that when we were kids, we're like 12 years old, and you have the guys over, we're all eating popcorn or whatever we're doing, and somebody goes, hey, you know what? We should call all the dickheads in the phone book. And we went, what? All the dickheads. We went, what are you talking about? And even in my small town, right, there were lots of Richard Heads. There were like 5 Richard Heads. And you went, no, there's not. And you look them up in the phone book, and you're like, oh my God. So
Seymour
of course,
Butts.
my friends, so my friends are like, hey, is Dickhead there?
You never believe it.
Of course. But so go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so what was it that really pushed you to become like a motivational speaker? Like what was it?
I think there's lots of things along the way. I'm constantly looking for people who want to be speakers, people who are drawn to the platform. If you have a message to share, that certainly draws people. So people who are writing books now who really have a message to share, not life story. Don't get me wrong, you can be a speaker with your life story, but most of the people who do that are self-centered. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to help all these other people. What tripped the trigger for me was I had been doing a lot of I do a ton of corporate work. So I go out and teach corporations how to run better meetings, how to be better managers, how to,
You've got some
operate
pretty big
better.
crowds at those events.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you do that, you get other opportunities. And I was at this small workshop for a small corporation, and I won't bore you with the details, but long story short, there were 12 guys sitting on machines that the boss had called me in and said, I want you to pump them up, make them feel good about their jobs, right? You're like, okay. So I go in and they drop me in this factory. The grease monkeys are on their machines. He tells them to shut them all down. He turns them around to face me and says, okay, they're all yours. What? That's my audience, right? That's who I'm. No office, no. This is it. Go for it. And I talk to those guys about what do you want your life to be, right? For whatever reason, I just was drawn to talk to them about how we can all become more than we are. And a year later, a guy comes to me and says, you're Steve Sapato, aren't you? I went, yeah. And he says, I just want you to know, you changed my life. And I'm looking at him like, what? He goes, you came to, and he told me where I was. I went, oh yeah, I remember that place. And he went, and what you said, I said, you know what? This is not what I want to do with my life. I want to be a fireman. And he said, so I decided right then and there that I was going to change my life. And I went out and I got my certification and I did this. And today I just got hired by the city to become a firefighter. And I wanted to say thank you for changing my life. And those are the things that's awesome. Make you say, I want to help other people. I want to do more. I want to change more people's lives. And it may not be your story that nudges them to a greater life. It may be just an idea. I tell people all the time, have me in to speak to your group. Come to my workshop seminars on business. One idea can change your life. And that's what I do. So thanks for asking.
Well, yeah, I find that really interesting because, myself included, I wrote a book centered around my personal life, but I hoped that it would somehow affect other people who might have been in similar circumstances, to maybe uplift them and make them change decisions in their own life. Not necessarily as I want to preach to you, but to make them feel in a way that we all kind of have our story to tell, and that there's more out there. Shoot for the stars, dream big. You can do it.
It's been making me think a lot lately too about wanting to possibly write a book at some point. I'm a good writer. I tend to like speaking more than writing. I get bored when I'm actually just literally writing, and so I've been using like some of the dictation, again, virtual world, using some like the dictation softwares to kind of like record what I'm saying and then go back and edit it from there, because for me it's a little less time.
Can I give you an idea? Grab a hold of a webinar, do a Zoom webinar or something. Take 2 weeks, invite everybody to come to listen to your webinar on whatever it is you want to talk on, right? And every 2 weeks, do a webinar. And out of that webinar, then you pull that out, right? And you can use 80% of that. If it's on the topic you want to write your book on, you can use 80% of that to put in chapters in your book, to put in parts of your book, to really convey a message in your book. And it'll come across more genuine too, because it's your voice.
That's a good point.
That's pretty awesome.
That's kind of what I was doing today. Is I didn't use a dictation software today, but while I was driving to Middletown, I had to run to the pharmacy. I basically plugged in a little microphone in my phone and started doing like kind of like a rough draft, kind of like what I would want to say. And I started realizing like I need to structure this a lot better in order to get my point across. Because I'm like,
that's right.
Oh,
that's right.
Tangent here,
I have authors call me up and they say, Steve, and authors know they need to speak to either sell more books or to become more popular. Just writing a book now, I mean, what is it? Something like the average book sells less than 200 copies in its lifetime.
And you probably pudged it yourself.
Yeah, and you push it out to your friends and relatives, and that's the point. But if you want the book to have an impact, first of all, it has to be impactful, right? On something that other people would love to learn about. And so if you've got a book, then all of them come to me and say, hey, Steve, I want to be an author. I want to be a speaker. I want to get my name out there so people can see me. And that's what it is. They have a message to share. That message has to be life-changing for others. Now, I've had a lot of authors come to me and say, can you teach me to speak? And of course, I'm not cheap, right? But I say, sure, absolutely. Let's put together a program. And we put it together, and then they'll argue with me. They go, well, that's not what I want to say. I go, but you can't talk about you. I always use one person as an example. They had a near-death experience, and everything was, I did this, I felt that, I had this, I know that. And it was like, but you can't keep saying I, especially if you're on stage. And if you're talking to people, in your book you said I, that's up to you. You probably didn't sell more than 40 or 50 copies because people go, well, it's boring. Right?
People don't care about you until they know you care about them.
That's right. And so when you tell people, like I've got a signature program I call Storytizing. And Storytizing is, everybody talks about storytellers, and I want you to answer the question. When you think about storytellers, what do you think about? Nighttime stories, putting people to sleep, helping everybody relax. I'm going to tell you a story. Sit back and relax, right? But as a speaker, it has to be so dynamic. I call it Storytizing. And what you do is you take your story, put it into your speaker blender. When you pour it out, it's your story, but it's using their memories and their emotions. And boy, it changes how people go, oh, they sit forward and they listen. You know, that's when I tell people, I got a website called Stop Boring Speakers. And it's designed, it's designed to have companies get in there because there's so many boring meetings going on. And people
especially
go, well,
now that Zoom is here, and people would be like, I'm just going to put my little face icon up there.
And that's one of the problems, see, is that when I was coming on, you guys were talking about it not being human anymore. We think it's okay to do that, right? Hey, yep. Steve's taking a break. Steve's taking a drink of water. Steve has to blow his nose. That's great. Do it for 10 or 15 seconds, but then leave it back. But most people, once they disappear, they're gone. They don't ever come back. And you don't get to see their face. And people say, that's okay. No, it's not.
Yeah, you just see the floating head. It's
well,
like,
if you're the person doing the talking, and I was on a webinar, a month ago, and 16 people were supposed to be on the webinar. 15 of them had just their avatar there. They never made a comment in the text. They never in the chat. They never did this. They never exposed when the person said, hey, can you, I'll slide your screen over so I can at least see what you look like. Not one slid over except the one guy, right? And you were like, wow, was there anybody really there? Was this person talking to the moon, right? And that's what people don't get. We still need to connect. We still need to look at comedians. Yeah, well, and I gotta, if I can look at Charles and see Charles, to me, is looking down, but that must be where his camera is because he's got good face. He's got good focus, right? And sometimes you got to look up and see that little thing and look at that person's eyes, but you want to look at the screen because that's where the person is. But you have to be involved. I've seen way too many webinars and stuff where the people are like, and that's what they do. They're sitting back there and you're like, well, are you comfortable? Are you paying any attention at all?
Or they fall asleep like me.
They might be, yeah. So I'm with Charles. You know, we need a lot more involvement. How can we involve people?
Well, that what you're saying is a key point. Last year we did the first virtual event for the Catskill International Film Festival that I run, and it was the first time ever doing it virtually. So in person, the live audience is in front of you. When you're doing a Q&A, I'm speaking right to you. You know, you're engaging with me, and we try to figure out how can we do this virtually, like doing something like Zoom, when sometimes you don't feel like, you know, some people are great speakers like yourself, but other people, they feel even more nervous because online, like when you go to in-person event, the little audience that you have might be your friends and family.
There's a feedback.
When you go online, you're open to the entire world now.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you got people with the virtual event. We had people from all over the world watching at any given moment. So people, I felt like because they were being recorded, they're online. It's just a different experience. So it's interesting. Like, and jumping into when you were talking about you going up there, doing these public speaking endeavors, myself included, I always I'll prepare something. You know, I took, you know, some speeching courses in college, but I'm nowhere near a speaker like yourself. But I'll attempt it, and I think I got it perfectly planned out. When I get up there, I'm telling you, it's like I always said: look at the audience, pretend they're naked. You can do it.
That's the worst thing, man. Then you go,
no. I go up there, I get stage fright. You know, I try to be as charismatic, but it's like, okay, get what I got to say out my mouth real quick and get the hell off this stage.
You know, I teach, first of all, I do teach speakers how to be better speakers. I taught college for 7 years, and it took me 2 years to figure out how to teach people how to get over stage fright, how to get over the fear of speaking in public, how to become confident in front of any group. So I teach that. I also teach a certified virtual presenters class, so that when you're done with my 8-week course, you're actually a certified virtual presenter, which means you've gotten skills on how to deal with the small screen. Because it's funny that you're in that film festival thing, because one of the things I absolutely love, I knock out of the park. A year ago, I put a thing online that said, hey, I'm looking for a movie job because I give great face, and then you start making all your faces, and I've got faces. The one thing I tell people, I learned how to make faces to keep from getting the snot beat out of me when I was young. At 15 years old, when 15 years old, I had a howdy doody face. Right. And I remember the first 2 times I got the snot beat out of me, and my dad, when he picked me up, would go, "What's the other guy look like?" And I go, "He has bloody knuckles." Right? and so you learned, granted, he sent me, my dad was, he was a tough guy, and he said, "I got to send you to this." And he took me to karate school and judo and whatever else it was, and at the time, jujitsu. And I'll never forget my teacher, Jim Barons. If he ever listens to this, Jim, I want you to call Steve Sapato. Anyway, he taught us that, you avoid fights at all costs, because to fight means you're fighting to the death. And so it was, how do you make a face so that when somebody confronts you, you give them the face either that scares them, or that makes them, or that makes them go, "Oh, I don't want to hurt that poor guy.
He's unhinged."
Right? So you had to find out what worked, and of course, in doing so, you learned how to make faces for fear. You learn how to make faces for fun. And I tell all of my students now, you have to spend 5 to 10 minutes in front of the mirror every day. When you get up in the morning, go to the mirror, right? I always tell them, go to the mirror, close the door, turn on the light, look in the mirror and say, "Wow, Steve, you're the best looking guy in the room." And if you say that, you're going to smile, because you can't say it with a straight face. And I've been doing this for 50 years, right? You can't say it with a straight face. Yeah, you should. It makes you feel good, and you're giving yourself a positive affirmation, because you're telling the truth. And people go, "Well, you're the only person, Steve." I go, "That's not the point." The point is, but when you make that face, you get to see. And again, when Charles talking about the film festival, I asked, you ever been asked by somebody, "Are you in a bad mood?" and you weren't? Not until they ask you, right?
You're like, "Well, now that you're talking to me."
But that's, you don't know. Most people don't know what face they're giving. Yeah. And so, especially on the small screen, Charles, if you worked with me for 8 weeks, we'd have you talking like crazy right on the stage. It'd be cool. But it's
maybe after the show.
Yeah. But it's one of those deals where people talk all the time and they don't think about it. And then they, like you say, they get in front of a camera and they're like, oh, what now? Nothing has changed. You know that? Nothing has changed.
Yep. But it's funny the effect that a lens has on people. Because you put that camera up, like myself included, like I've tried to film a commercial for myself where 14 takes into it, and I'm a guy who's pretty easy to talk on camera. Like I don't mind being in public. I don't mind being on stage. It doesn't make me nervous anymore. None of that. And I'm sitting there going like, like literally, I made a blooper video because it was so crazy.
If you went back and looked at my videos or my online stuff, you would see that every once in a while you just make a mistake and you go, "Hey, I'm a professional speaker. I can do this," and you just blow, just like you would in real life. Yeah. It's like when you stumble over something on the sidewalk. Do you just sit down and just pout? No, you go and you look back. You're like, "Well, what was that?" And there's nothing there, and you got to look around then to see who else saw you stumble over nothing. But you just go on, and that's what speaking is like. We're all going to make mistakes. We're not perfect. I'd like to say, hey, you're not going to ever make a stumble in your verbalization, but you will. And when it happens, just go, "Oh, and I'm a professional, so everyone be careful out there."
What do you do, Steve, when you get that audience that's not open-minded? What do you do to captivate them and to lure them in? Because even with comedy shows, with other storytellers I've seen, some of the audience just isn't with it. What do you do to get them to engage?
Yeah. First of all, understand that it's like people liking you. Everybody's not going to like you. Okay. If I walk into a room, half the people are going to like me. Half of the half left aren't going to care about me. and the other half, which is a quarter of the room, are going to dislike me because my personality rubs them wrong. Okay, so I'm never going to try and capture that bottom 25%. They don't matter to me. Who matters are the people who are paying attention to you and giving you the attention. You know, it's when I go in front of an audience, probably the last 4 or 5 years, and everybody's looking down at their cell phones. If everybody's looking down at their cell phones, Charles, do I try and capture them all? No, I look at the ones who are not looking down at their cell phones. They're giving me respect, right? Now, if I'm a teacher, if I'm teaching them and they have to get my information, you know, then you make up something where you say, hey, you know what? I sure appreciate, I don't know what's going on you guys' lap, but I hope it's not what I think it is. I hope it's your cell phone. Is that what it is? So please don't be looking at your cell phones. Put them up on the table, put them up on the thing. So at least we'll know, right?
Yeah.
But you need to get this information. So I don't want to embarrass them. I don't want to make them feel bad. And I certainly don't want to single them out because that will actually make them dislike you even more. So what I try to do, and it only comes with experience. I was telling a story the other day when I was brand new in speaking. I was talking to 20 people and it was supposed to be an hour-long workshop. Okay. So it wasn't something where I could just entertain them and have fun. It was a workshop. I had to get the information across. And I was putting them to sleep. And I knew I was. You know, everybody's like, oh, man, this is rugged. You know, this guy's been going on. And there's a guy in the front row who's out. I mean, he's out from 10 minutes into the talk. And I'm watching him, right? And so we're about 30 minutes into this, maybe 35 or something. And I see this guy just doing one of these. Right? And I'm like, oh, no, oh, no. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, he falls right out on the floor. Bam. I'm like, oh, and of course, everybody jumps up. I hope he didn't have a heart attack. I hope this, you know, what's going on? And everybody rushes to look. And of course, when he wakes up, I mean, that's all it was. He woke up when he goes, oh man, I fell asleep. I'm really sorry. All 20 people knew that Steve Sapato had put that poor man so sound asleep that he fell out of his chair. Now, you will be embarrassed, right? It will hurt your feelings. And at that point in time, I didn't know how to engage the audience. I didn't know how to make a difference. Since then, I've really learned a lot. And that question is a great question because what you need to do is you'll have to adjust your talk to include more people. Okay, that's that storytizing feature that I talk about. But you have to adjust. When you see, if I've got 50 people in the room, right? Let's just say 50 people in the room, and 30 of them are paying pretty good attention, and 20 of them are like, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to stick with those 30. We're going to be fine. But if you've got 100 people in the room and half the room is like, man, right? Something you're talking on, something. I did a talk about 4 years ago, got paid the wonderful money up front and didn't pay enough attention to who my audience was. I had 250 people all taking notes. I was supposed to teach them X, Y, Z. And I made the mistake. Somebody said something and I said, well, I don't drive American cars because the American cars just haven't worked for me. So I drive foreign cars. You know, they've really been taken care of. And I don't know why American manufacturers don't catch up. Took a break. Thank God it was the second day. Took a break for lunch. And as I'm out there, a couple of the guys said something to me and I went, well, what's going on? And they went, we're ABWA, you know, or was it American Auto Workers? I'm dissing the American cars. And I'm talking to American auto workers. So that wasn't the whole audience, but it was a good chunk of them right there. And so I alienated them. It was my job to make sure I didn't alienate anyone else. Does that help, Charles? You got to figure it out, and you got when you move forward. It's tough. Experience. That's the best thing.
I always tell people, you know, and even Stefan and I, we have this, you know, conversation a lot. I said, you know, before we put anyone on the show, I think it's important that we research them. And we look into what they're doing because you never know if something's going to offend somebody or, you know, this guy wrote a book about X, Y, and Z. I want to know what it's about. You know, for the most part, it's important to do your research, especially if you're doing something in a public manner. There's too many people out there. They're doing interviews or they're doing talk shows or whatnot. Even you've seen it a lot with the celebrities now where people are getting completely canceled because of things they said or whatever. People didn't do their research. And you know, freedom of speech is free, but to a certain extent, you know, you can't spread hate. You can't, you know, do things that are going to hurt other people. And now it's like, there's so much controversy over so many different things, so many different things.
We can't talk about it. I mean, that's the other part of that is we can't talk about it. I reposted about 3 things on my Facebook page because it was black people saying things about an issue. And if they're saying it, it's okay. But if I'd have tried to say that, the roof would have caved in on Steve, because I'm the old white guy that everybody's trying to get rid of. So it's tough to have a conversation anymore that we can actually have a conversation. My son is the 180-degree difference from me. He believes in all the stuff I don't believe in. He actually moved to Europe, right? And you're like, wow, that's significant. And so when you understand that, we still have conversations, but we're very careful about what we talk about, because if I cross that line, we saw something the other day, my wife and my son has always explained to me, and I love listening to my son because he has so much new information, but he's a big LGBTQ, right? So, and he told me what all those letters stood for 5-10 years ago. And I was like, okay. And then one day I said something because he's got a lot of gay friends, or whatever that is, right? Those friends. And but I said something about queers, and he said, Dad, you can't say queer. I went, it's LGBTQ. And he went, but queer is not in right now. You can't say that word. I went, well, how would I know that? Right? That's what I always ask. Nobody told me. We don't talk about it enough, or say, you can't say queer now, it's out. And then a year later, it's LGBTQIA. I just saw that, IA. And I'm like, well, I got to call. I got to talk to him the next time and ask him what IA stands for, because it might be inquiring, right? And something, but so exactly what Charles said, we've got so many things that are impacting us, and people want to be offended at. And you go, I'm open. I don't want to be offended by anything. And I would rather you shared with me everything that's bothering you. Tell me what I'm saying wrong and why it's wrong.
We live in a very unredemptive society right now. Like, people can't make an unredemptive society. People have trouble. You can't say something that may have meant as a joke, and to be fair, sometimes it can come across as offensive to some people, like, whatever you may say, and you may not even realize that it was the case, and next thing you know, you're blacklisted. And it's like, it's really frustrating.
I think the uncomfortable conversations are extremely important. Absolutely. I think even the uncomfortable jokes, and like even them going back and forth, are extremely important. They're getting two different jokes. They're getting two different types of people, belief systems, to kind of see eye to eye. And like, I had a show I did with my friend Ryan Kamaska the other day, and in the interview we were talking a lot about cancel culture and freedom of speech, public speaking he does, and we were saying like how having tunnel vision and only seeing your own point of view is the worst thing you can possibly do.
Oh yeah.
It's basically, your own best friend. You're so uncultured, so that's the whole thing. I thought it was an important topic, with public speaking and everything now.
It's a huge, we have to be able to talk about those things in order to fix them. I always go back. I grew up in the 60s, really. That's when my high school times happened. And we talked, the high school I went to, the grade school I went to didn't have any black people, any Hispanic people, any Asian people. It was too small. And it was a little teeny town. When I went to high school, all of a sudden I seeing blacks, Hispanics, Asians. I'm like, whoa. Only my parents didn't bring me up to be prejudiced. They were just different people. And so we talked about those things, we got into fights about those things. But in those days, when you got into a fight, you got knocked down, the person actually helped you back up and you almost became good friends, because we all learned from all that stuff. Now they want to take a knife out and kill you because you said something wrong, you did something wrong, you looked at them wrong.
Or you're automatically put into a group. Like, you say anything, or you have any individual belief that may be contrary to what they are, and then you are a socialist, you are a conservative, you are a racist, you are a liberal, you are whatever the case may be.
That's right.
You say one word that doesn't fit with what they want, and automatically, and I get into arguments with people about this all the time, because it's like, you're talking about not being racist, and you're summarizing an entire freaking group of people based on one aspect.
There's people who talk. You can't be a racist, but they're a racist. That's just the way the world is. But it's an odd thing that We have to be able to converse. We have to be able to share in order to understand each other better. That's it's funny that I talk to people about little things like men don't understand women. We don't understand women. When I was in my 19, 20, 21-year-old, and my girlfriend would have her time of the month and have cramps, and nobody talked to me about cramps. Nobody talked to me about women's time of the month. So had we not had a conversation, I would have always said, well, that's just stupid. I've had stomach cramps before. I didn't go crying. We had to have those conversations in order to understand more. And I got some wonderful friends who I grew up with in high school who I'm still in touch on Facebook with. Because we had a funny thing happen that somebody a year or two years ago, before all this, I don't know how long ago, maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago, but it was a while back, where somebody said, how many friends of color do you have? And I wrote, gee, now that I think about it, none. And about 7 of my friends jumped in and said, well, what am I? I thought we were friends. And of course, they're black and they're Mexican. And I'm like, well, I never thought about you being black or Mexican, right? It didn't cross my mind. They were my friends. They weren't a race. So yeah. I'm sorry, Charles, I interrupted. You were going to say
No, that's absolutely what I'm saying. I feel like speaking in general, freedom of speech, it bridges people together. And it's important to have like I said, those conversations. Because at times, like we were saying before, well, the cancel culture, but there's an upside to it. Public speaking, the art form in general, like there's a lot to love about it, and people, are inspired. We were saying before how you changed that guy's life. He became a firefighter. You're able to really impact people's lives, not just you, but people in general with this art form. Is this something in general like that you love more? Like, what is your favorite aspect of public speaking?
I think it's watching people's lights come on. They might, whether we're talking, because I also teach relationships. So when we're sitting in a live event and you got 30 women in front of you, most of the time it's women, because the guys won't come. Guys don't come to relationship workshops, but the women are there and they'll say something and you're like, and you say, well, let me ask you a question. And then you ask that question, and questions are the answers most of the time. So when you ask the right question, you see the women go, wait, I didn't understand that. And the perfect line is, wait, I didn't understand that. It means you asked them something that suddenly popped a bubble here. And they were like, I know what you said, but I didn't get it because I'm not thinking that direction. And that's how we need to treat everybody in every aspect of our culture. Whether, I've been fighting for 50 years to take away the Democrat and Republican labels, because when you ask a Democrat, what makes you a Democrat, they give you the same like 12 sentences, right? This is what makes a Democrat and this is what makes a Republican. And then you watch the voting and you listen to the other people, and it's not at all, right? It's just what they've been told to regurgitate about this makes a Democrat and this makes a Republican. So if we could do away with the labels and just vote on people because they actually said something worth listening to, what a difference the world would be.
What you're saying right now is so relevant to the times, because a lot of people, in general, when you read what they write, a lot of people are misinformed about what they actually are. A lot of people that identify as, conservative or liberal, they're actually vice versa when they break down the nitty gritty of what each party represents. I don't know how many people during this last election cycle, I see their political tirade on Facebook equals, that they are a diehard Republican, even though they're anti-Republican.
Yeah.
And vice versa. I see a lot of, and what it is with the freedom of speech, people have the ability to go on there and say and do whatever they want. And at times they're spreading total misinformation. That's why I tell people, you really do your research before you go out and speak. And right, and especially for someone like me, Stefan, I don't try to get deep down into politics personally, because it affects your crowd. Do I have beliefs? Yes. But do I have religious beliefs or anything? I don't want to spread them on everybody, because I don't want to outcast potential people to support me and vice versa. So, and I don't feel a need to, as long as, I'm inclusive,
That's
it's right. That's what I really, feel ultimately about that. But it is interesting, the misinformation that's spread. and
Well, the misinformation is what we think we are, or we think we do. That's what's amazing to me is if you ask the right questions, you'll put a crack in that window. You know, you won't open the door so they walk through it going, oh, I didn't understand. You'll put a crack in their window so that they go, wait, what did that mean? Or, but that's how I think, right? So if we learn how to ask the right question, I got a new book coming up called Shut Up and Succeed. And it's really about how to ask questions, listen to the answers, and ask some more questions so that you actually either understand them more or they understand you a little bit more by how they answer the questions and how the questions are asked. It's, Charles, it's really a tough place right now because we are at the mercy of all of the hypers, you know, the hypos who jump in and call you names and try and, you know, do, it's like, wait a minute, we're having a conversation here. Why did you have to, I've thrown several people, blocked them, right? Got rid of them. Because I tell people, as soon as you're rude, obnoxious, name calling on my page, it's my page. You're gone.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm entirely open.
Right away if you
Stefan, you're whatever you did is
it's worse.
It's way worse, Stefan. For the most part, you know, Stefan tonight, I don't know, Stefan. I don't know. But for the most part, I totally agree with you. I am entirely for, you know, debating people. If you are strongly enough to post something and receive the backlash and you can support your opinion, don't back down. Have those conversations. But if, like I said, if you start throwing low blows, you want to talk about family, you want to start talking about my history and things, that's when the guy, I totally agree with you. And I have family and other friends who, you know, during the political cycle and, you know, things that were posted that's going on in the world, they entirely alienate their friends.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I'm no longer on Facebook. I'm blocking Facebook. So you're just going to live in a bubble for the rest of your life. You're just going to,
or
you're going to go into a bubble.
If you say this, you might as well unfriend me right now.
That I can't tell you how annoyed that makes me personally feel. Yeah. When people say, like, if you believe in such and such, we can't be friends.
Yeah, what? How
there was a time, and you know, like I said, you're to each your own, but I think it's more important for people to have those conversations. Having someone like you, it's important to have people to speak their beliefs and inspire others. I want to jump into this topic about your books and your process of, like,
okay, hold on. I'm gonna back up one sec because
all right,
I was an assistant at as a debate coach when I was in college. Okay, I never took debate in high school. I never took debate in college. But one of the people said, "Hey, I need some help. Can you sit in?" And I learned then that these people who do debate will take, like, let's use politics as they would take the Republican side and debate all the stuff that's positive for Trump. And then they would take, right, like 2 weeks later, a month later, they would take the Democratic side and debate all the terrible things about Trump. And it was so cool because you actually looked at both sides. What an opportunity, right? I'm sorry. Let's jump back into what you did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, to go back to what you're saying, sorry, I'm jumping back and forth.
Sorry.
But it's how we learn and how, you know, people learn, like with the virtual learning and everything now. And even back when I was in school, a lot of times you learn things based on people's personal beliefs. Oh. You know, not for nothing, there's a biased edge even in our education system. The people that they're teaching the newest generation, they're teaching them how to learn because it's based on their own beliefs. So, for example, like what you were just saying, they learn both sides of the coin. What you were just saying, that doesn't happen. From my personal experience, that didn't happen when I took, you know, U.S. government classes and stuff like that, political science type courses. You're learning a straight way. And the way I learned, at least as far as I'm concerned, in New York State, was a very liberal teaching scale. Now, open, free education should be knowing what both stand for and, you know, stuff like that. But I've
seen articles where the college professors actually threw students out of class because they didn't believe that they were teaching. And you're like, I don't get that. That's, you're not really teaching them. You are educating them on a specific way that you need them to learn, but you're not teaching them. Right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't want to get too political and have people like these guys, but no, it's comfortable. It's interesting conversation. I think it's important. About your books, you've wrote a lot of books, and to me, this is like, I'm a fanboy of authors. I really am, especially people who have like really done it. A few of my friends wrote a book. It inspired me to write a book. But
which reminds me, I'll interrupt here, because I've had several people in the last 6 or 8 months spend $10,000 and $20,000 to get their book published. Now they've already written the book; they just need to get it formatted and do all that. 10 to 20. Tell the people who are listening, get in touch with me. I'll put you in touch with a person I know who does a great job for about $2,500, $3,000. Anyway, I just hate people getting ripped off. So sorry.
Well, now we live in a world now.
And
just to add to what you're saying,
I'm really sorry, guys, for all the interruption with the sound. So
that's all right. We're going to execute you later on.
Exactly. But to add what you were saying, a lot of people don't realize with self-publish, like there is self-publishing option out there. That's what I've done.
Yes.
For my book. But I don't say this is the guaranteed way to do it. There's a lot of pros and cons to each. You can go through a traditional publishing house. However, if you're going to do something like this, make sure you take the correct steps. And one of them is hiring a professional editor to look at your work, or, at least knowing you have the skill set to do it. I know a few people, and I've read a few things that off of Amazon, where it kind of lured me away from self-publishing there prior to doing so. Because I was like, wait a minute, this is on there? Like, it's clearly big, giant mistakes, formatting issues, technical, So I advise anybody. It is an option out there. It's free.
Well, and the problem is and I'm going to jump, it's like life coaches. See, I'm a small business coach because I've owned 5 brick and mortar stores of my own. I own 3 online stores now. But if you talk about, yeah, thanks. But if you talk about life coaches, I mean, I'm 71 years old. I got plenty of experience behind me in relationships and all this other stuff. And people jump in as life coaches, certified life coach. And what they did is they took a 3 months course that cost them $8,000 so they could be a certified life coach. Now, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. What I am saying is when we talk about who's going to publish us, there are people who are great, can put together a book for $1,500, let's say. And there are people who are horrible who said, I can charge $20,000 and do this. And one of the ones I was just talking to just spent, I think it was $15,000. And when you spend $15,000 for me with a publisher, and this is supposed to be a reputable person, in the industry, and you should get a hardback book and it should be flawless in terms of how it's put together. And this person got their paperback book, 120 pages long, that had, she said, over 115 still errors in the, spelling and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, wow. So, I mean, you have to be cautious no matter
what
they not get spending. Sued? Well, they might. I mean, I don't know. But
when you sign an agreement with any editor, there's a whole contingency in there that says, this will not be a work of 100% correction. They're working up to the best of their abilities. They do a few rounds of edits, but it's actually up to the writer too, when they reread it, to kind of scout out some of the other errors.
Yeah.
So it's a lot
we don't read the legalese, right, Charles?
Yeah, it's all the little fine print. You got to look in there.
Somebody called us the accept culture because, like, literally everything that we signed up for has that little clause. Did you read the terms and conditions? And how many times do you just hit accept and just go on with it? Because I can't be bothered. And then you're like, I
bought a car and I bought a house. Did I read the whole contract? No, it's like, sign here. Okay. But they're 20 pages long, right? So you're like, yeah.
So I wanted to get into, a little topic about your books. I've been trying to get in there. You've come up with a vast variety of different books over the years. And what is like your process of like, I need to find this content? Is it something this is relevant to today's society, or is this more relevant to your interest at the time? Like, how do you
I think
Go
it's
forth.
almost always my interest at the time. So, for example, my relationship book called The 20, and it's the 20 things you need to learn in order to find the love of your life. So when I did the book tour, everybody was jumping all over me. Do you have the love of your life? And I was like, no, I'm single. They went, well, how can you write a book? It's not how to find the love of your life. It's the 20 things you need to learn in order to find the love of your life. And that came about because after my second marriage was ending, I started to ask more questions. I started to ask other people, and an unheard of number of people. I interviewed 2,400 people and couples for a little 100-page book called The 20, right? And people go, what? How many? Right? Because most people interview 100, 150. So for me to interview 2,400, it was just unheard of. But it was more like a conversation. I would talk to them. So it took me 2 years of talking to people and putting down what worked for them, what didn't work for them, why didn't it work, how long did it, all those things. So that one was more of a journey of love for how to help other people succeed in their relationship. The next couple were business books. Now, I've owned businesses, but I've spoken as a corporate speaker. That's why I bill myself as the most famous, unfamous speaker in America. Because when you're working in corporate America, nobody's going to know that you're a Tony Robbins, right? Tony Robbins is out in the public. When you're in the private realm, nobody knows who you are. They don't know that you've worked in 400 companies this year, probably made more money than Tony Robbins would have made had he not been famous. But so when you're doing that, you also get to learn what works in companies and what doesn't work in companies. So my 2 business books that came out next were because of that. And then probably a year after that, when I went back to really being an entrepreneur, I watched so many small business people absolutely fail in their networking. And I was like, why is that? Well, first of all, I come from the Midwest. If you come from the Midwest, and now I don't know about recently, but for the last 30 years, nobody said, hey, you got to go networking. What they said was, you have to go to the Chamber of Commerce and let everybody meet you. You have to go to this and let everybody meet you. Networking was a new concept for me for a while. And then I started realizing how many people were failing miserably in not getting enough leads. And so I started I read, I attended, I asked. And what I finally came up with was how to become the go-to person for your own success, which is, again, a 100-page book on professional business networking that teaches them 5 questions that they have to ask in this order in order to get an appointment from somebody that they really want to do business with. So all those things came about as my interests. I'm glad you asked that, because they're really my interest. It's what you're when I teach people to be speakers now, Charles, what are you passionate about? Now, a lot of people can't answer that. So we sit down and have a nice conversation, try and figure that out. But that's what makes a great speaker. That's also what makes a great author, is the passion. So if you're a mystery writer and your passion is finding things, that you can send people to on these little journeys for the mysteries, that's great. Me trying to sit down and write I tried that one time, Charles. I said, I want to write a book about, that'll be interesting to people to read, like Harry Bosch novels or something. I got about 40 written pages in and went, this doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't like it. So I quit.
Your books, though, as far as the way you explain them, even though they're passionate about you, I could find them to be very relatable. Just in general. I mean, like, for someone that's in business, someone that's interested in getting involved in business, somebody who's not sure, maybe they're on the cuff with their own relationships, I find them to be very relative. I mean,
thank you.
You do what you know, and you speak about what you know, which is important. And I think
you speak with enthusiasm.
A lot of writers in general don't. They kind of like they experts in their own field that they've never experienced, and those are tough. Those are tough sells. So.
They are. That's right. And a lot of people write. One of the drawbacks when I was in school was both my high school and my college teachers said, the problem with your writing, Steve, is you write like you talk. And I went, well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? When, of course, according to the powers that be, no, you're not. You're supposed to write a certain way. Well, now that, I always call it, if you graduated like I did from the School of Hard Knocks, that is part of your journey, and that's what will make you rich. And that's what we talk about, how we can help make you rich by that School of Hard Knocks journey and all the stories you have and all the things you can relate to. It also creates an energy. It also creates an excitement. When people write a book, if they're not energized about it, it's probably going to be a pretty dry book. Now, I say dry because I have people who want to be speakers, and they say, Steve, you don't understand. My material is boring. And I always go, no, your material is dry. You're boring. And that's the sad
They don't want to
truth
hear
about
that.
it. Well, nobody does, but that's, when you write, if what you're writing about is your passion, I mean, we're Think and Grow Rich. You can tell that the guy was passionate. My wife is reading it. I'm reading it for like the 10th time with her. And so, that person really lived that experience. And so there's lots of different books out there that could be very dry material, but they're not, because the people were in love with how they put it together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
It's true. I mean, and I think it carries over into whatever field you work in, especially like, your ability to speak and to get your point across in a way that isn't always, sometimes like difficult topics, like even on simple workplace issues, like to be able to get your point across in a way that's enthusiastic without offending people. And if you do offend them, being able to dance around that in a way that you can win them back. Like that's all, you have to learn how to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely right.
Because there's been many times where my foot has been so far inserted in my mouth that it came out the other end. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever been able to dig myself out of those holes. I'm a lot more conscious now than I used to be about putting my foot there. That's for sure.
Yeah, me too.
What do you feel makes a good storyteller?
Oh wow, the number one thing that makes a great storyteller is excitement and energy. I promote my Storytizing course because I believe that people have to change how they tell their stories. But there are some people who can tell a story about themselves, and it's only about themselves, and yet we love to hear it. So it's the excitement and the energy you put into it that gets people really involved in your story, right? The second part, of course, is that you have to tell it about them. So if I tell you I went to the grocery store and I tell you a 5-minute story about me going to the grocery store, you're going to be, falling off their stool, taking a nap. But if I say, hey, have you ever gone to the grocery store? Why did you go to the grocery store? When you go to the shelves, what's the first thing you look for? It's still the same journey, but now I'm using your memories and your emotions to convey a message. And that's what I teach people. So to me, it's the energy and the excitement and the ability to storytize your information so that people go, oh, wow, that's me.
And when you're speaking, it's the ability to get that across also through your body language. Like I've heard somebody recently, I forget the name of the guy, but he said like, again, I'm a big fan of like stand-up comedy. And the guy was like, watch yourself on mute. Are you still laughing? If you're not, you're doing something wrong.
That's
and
right.
it carries over also to just passion and any other emotion. If you're not able to share that on screen, people
maybe because not every comedian is a Jim Carrey with an elastic face. True. Sometimes you got people like that are very like Larry David types that are very dry.
Yes, but he's expressive though. Like he still is expressive.
But I don't know. It depends on what you're saying and how it affects the audience. Somebody's got feedback. I don't know who.
That's Stefan. But yeah, so I call them positive modifiers. I teach my people. That's one thing about audience involvement. You have to look for the positive modifiers. You have to get a positive modifier back at least once every minute. If people go, once a minute, I go, yeah, just something like, yeah, I'm understanding you. No, I'm not getting that. If you say something, it's an oh. It doesn't have to always be funny. It doesn't have to always create an impact. It's just like, oh yeah, I get that. You understand? Like when you say, do you understand that? And people go, mm-hmm. Right? It's that positive modifier that they have to start learning to get from their audience. And it is tough. Stefan said, I'm a nutball for comedy clubs. I just love them. But I've watched comedians for, 40 years. absolutely die on stage, right? They had great material, they just couldn't deliver it right. Other people have terrible material and deliver it and get by. Now, I won't say they're super funny, but they get by, and people go, "Oh yeah, that was good. We like them. Pay them another $500 to come back next week, right?" And so comedians have to evolve from the stage, and that's what most speakers have to do, and they don't understand. That's why when I usually teach speakers, I say it's 6 months to a year, and they go, 6 months to a year? I said, how long did it take you? What do you do for a living? And they say this. I said, how many years did you go to college for that? And they go, well, 4. I go, well, so I'm not telling you got to take 4 years of college to become a professional speaker. I'm telling you should take 1, right? And the 1 is because with 1 year of me being able to work with you, I can get you, or you can get you on a stage every month, a real stage, right? My Speaker Talks platform puts you on a stage for me for 15 minutes, right? So I can guarantee you 1 stage where you'll speak in front of an audience. But that's not going to make you a professional speaker. What makes you professional is talking in front of everybody that will have you for free in the beginning. People go, free? I don't sign up with you for free, Steve. I said, when you get here, because you need a speaker reel and you need a 1-page, and you need a this, all that makes a professional speaker. And then you have to apply, right? And so if you apply to 100 places and you get 1 gig, people go, wow, really, 100 places? I go, but what if that 1 gig pays you $10,000? Right? Because that's what a lot of the speaking gigs pay $10,000. A lot of them pay at least 5. If you're not charging $5,000, people they're not even gonna look at you. I was talking with and I forget what they call them, the people who take care of speakers, like they got them in a warehouse. And they say, she looked at me and she said, Steve, and I was interviewing her. She said, Steve, I wouldn't even work with you. I went, you wouldn't work with me? She goes, you only charge $10,000. I went, that's a lot. To me, $10,000. So she said, my worst speaker gets $15,000 an hour and my top speaker gets $75,000. See, there's all kinds of opportunities sitting out there that most of us don't even apply for because we don't know how. And that's some of the stuff that I teach. But it is all about, you have to pay your dues too. In 8 weeks of speaker training, I can get you comfortable on a stage. You're not going to be the world's greatest speaker, but you're going to be comfortable on stage and not afraid of making a mistake. But when we go to 6 months, you're going to be darn good. And if we go for a year, I promise you're going to be one of the best in the industry, because we're going to work on all the little nuances that make a difference. All the things like facial expression and gestures and vocal quality and vocal tone and how much you lean forward into the,
I think it's important because a lot of people, it's like the same thing with college. There's so many people out there that they go to college, they go for 4 years, they go beyond, get their master's, whatever. They assume that as soon as I get this, I'm getting the dream job. You got to pay your dues. Sometimes you got to start on the bottom, work your way up, really feel, learn from the bigwigs.
Doctors are that, everybody said, oh, I want to grow up and be a doctor. Well, doctors, 4 years in college, then 2 years of medical college, then 2 years as an intern, and then 2 years as a resident. And then if they specialize, they got to spend another 2 or 3 years in that specialty. Doctors don't just become doctors, right? They paid their dues. They started at the bottom, man. Crazy.
Mm-hmm. Important knowledge.
Yeah.
But I have a few fun questions before we end this segment tonight.
All right.
You can answer them honest as you can, okay?
You want me to be honest? Wait a minute.
Honest.
Stefan, you didn't say anything about honesty, right? You
got to be honest as you can. If you could only read one book for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I think it would be How to Win Friends and Influence People. Because that's so important. It's the most people don't understand. I teach this again, but everybody doesn't know. They all say they know, but people don't care about you. People go, I know that. I go, no, they don't care about you. They go, I know that. I go, then tell me, if you're doing an elevator pitch for your business, why you talk about your business and why you talk about yourself. Doesn't make any sense. There's no correlation there. So you got to change your elevator pitch if you understand people don't care about you. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, another one. That's a good answer. If you were a dessert,
you win a prize.
What dessert would you be?
Oh, I have so many favorite desserts. I think cherry pie. Cherry pie because my wife loves cherry pie.
That's an even better. That's
named after her.
I'm gonna leave this one. Okay.
What was yours, Charles?
Me? I have to be something like, I don't know, like maybe it'd be pistachio ice cream.
Oh, I love
Firecracker
Yeah,
ice cream. Ah.
What is that?
Yeah, firecracker ice cream?
Pull that out of my
I don't know. You go,
But
I don't
it
know.
is actually a type of ice
That's,
cream. Though.
that's like I say tuna fish all the time on everything. I don't know.
What would the title of your autobiography be?
I already wrote it.
What? Well, I guess I didn't do my research.
It's the unintended Casanova.
The unintended Casanova.
That is it.
Is this a romance novel? Because I didn't remember seeing this.
It's an erotic novelette.
Thing either.
It's an erotic novelette on Amazon. Yeah. I think it's only about 20 pages long. I mean, it's just because I started to write it and I was having so much fun, and then I went, "Oh, I got to quit. I'm going to get in trouble." So there it is.
You gotta live and learn. But listen,
But that's one of those where I find myself. My mom and dad. My dad really taught me to be nice to women, and nice to women to me means kind of like flirt. My wife tells me that all the time. You flirt with everybody. I went, I don't mean to. I'm just trying to be nice, but everybody takes it a different way. So that's one of the things I have to be real conscious of. But that also got me in lots of trouble and lots of great experiences. So that's, it's like, I didn't mean for that to happen. Okay. Unintended Casanova.
Unintended Casanova. I like it. It's pretty awesome.
Good title, man.
It's been a wonderful hour with you.
Yes, it has.
Steve, I would love to have you again sometime. This has been great. And if you ever want to get involved in the show, just hit us up. And also, how can our people find you after this?
Yeah, what's the best way to get in contact?
StopBoringSpeakers.com is my website that I like to send people to, but you can just get a hold of me, Steve at SteveSapato.com. So if you see it here on the screen, Steve, the @ symbol, SteveSapato.com.
Awesome.
Thanks for asking.
All right.
Thank you, Steve. It's been great.
Again, man.
It's been great. Thank
Really
you, guys.
appreciate
This
it.
is very great. Thanks.
Great talking to you.
All right.
All right, bye.
So, hey, everybody. That was a wonderful show today. I'm thanking you guys for watching. Remember, submissions for the Catskill International Film Festival open February 26th. So if you know filmmakers, submit to the Catskill International Film Festival. This year is going to be bigger than ever. I could feel it. I'm excited. Stefan, we're going to watch a lot of movies, a lot of movie nights, popcorn. But
you'll have more popcorn than me, but I'll definitely watch the movies with you.
Damn right. But have a great night. We will see you guys next Tuesday.
All right, guys. Peace out.